You aren't muted in the recording, right, Art?
No, I'm not.
Like you're
No, I'm not. We're
okay.
good. We're good. Okay, I think we're live now. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm actually part of it this time. I don't know if I will be going forward, but we'll see. And we have Try as usual and White Supremacy. So I wanted to join specifically for this topic because it's an important one. It's an important distinction between what is authoritarianism and what is totalitarianism. It's important that people know they are not the same. And in fact, I think one of them is good, authoritarianism. And when you listen to rhetoric from the news or really from anybody, especially online, they conflate the two. They make the two sound like they're the same when they're not. Authoritarianism, kind of like how I relate pretty much everything in politics, authoritarianism is hardly any different to parents and their children, how they raise their children, take care of their children. You know, I mean, it should be the father. I don't think the mother should be the one raising the kids, but that's a whole other subject. It's what they say that matters. It's their rules that matter. It's not a democracy. My grandparents, for example, they raised 10 kids total, and that was never a democracy. The kids did not decide anything just because there was more of them. It was parents' rules, dad's rules, should be for every household. And whether you like it or not, these are the rules. That is how governments should be operated. There's no question of that in my mind. And I mean, essentially, the reason I think authoritarianism is a good thing is because that's what rule is. All authority is authoritarianism, or is authoritarian. Uh, what's the point of having rules if they're up for debate? If they're at least among the people being ruled, what's the point of all of it? There is none. And to think otherwise is just childish. Totalitarianism is different. And that is what people think of when they think of dictatorships, when they think of regimes that are too harsh on their people. That is totalitarianism. So did you want to be the one to define and fully elaborate on their definitions and their differences?
Yeah, I can take over for that.
Go ahead. I'll let you do it.
All right. So, hello everyone watching. So, I mean, to really understand the difference between authoritarianism and totalitarianism, we can look at some different examples, but we'll go over a brief definition, right? Now, Ark has established like the conceptual clarity of it, which is good. I mean, but we can get a little bit deeper into the authoritarian side and then go to the totalitarian side of how they function on a broader, more governmental level. Right? Authoritarianism is a system of governance defined by the centralization of political authority. Power is concentrated, opposition is limited, and decision making is not dispersed amongst the population. However, authoritarianism does not inherently demand total control over a culture, belief, identity, or private life. Its concern is order, continuity, and maintenance of state authority. In contrast, totalitarianism, on the other hand, is not merely a stronger form of authoritarianism. It's an entirely different phenomenon. Totalitarianism seeks total domination of reality itself. It does not stop at political obedience. It demands ideological conformity, psychological submission, and moral alignment. The state becomes the arbiter of truth, history, language, and even thought. Where authoritarianism stays, you may live your life, but you may not challenge the state politically. Totalitarianism says you may not think, speak, remember, or believe outside the state's ideology. And we can get this into some examples if y'all want. So I'd say for this, one of the perfect examples of authoritarianism is Francoist Spain, right? Francisco Franco rose to power after one of the most destructive civil wars in European history. Spain was not merely politically divided, it was culturally, religiously, and ideologically fractured. Franco's regime was born not from utopian ambition, but from exhaustion and near collapse. The primary function of Francoist authoritarianism was containment containment of communism, containment of regional separation, containment of ideological chaos. Political opposition was suppressed, elections were meaningless, and the military and state apparatus defined governance. But crucially, Franco did not attempt to reconstruct Spanish identity from the ground up. The Catholic Church was restored rather than reinvented. Family structures remained intact. Local traditions survived. Private life largely continued untouched as long as it didn't challenge the political authority of the Francoist regime. This distinction is different, and it matters. Franco ruled as a strongman caretaker, not as an ideological prophet. He did not promise a new humanity, only stability and order. And for a time, it worked. Spain stabilized, violence subsided, infrastructure improved. The nation avoided the fate of many ideologically radicalized states. But the regime contained a fatal weakness. It was not generational. Francoism revolved around Franco himself, his authority, his victory, his personal legitimacy. There was no deeply rooted loyalty to the system, only acceptance of it as a preferable thing to chaos. When Franco died in 1975, fear vanished faster than belief could replace it. The system did not collapse violently, but it couldn't reproduce itself. Spain transitioned almost immediately towards constitutional monarchy, funny how that works, and democratic governance later on. Francoist Spain proves that authoritarianism can prevent collapse, but cannot endure without a structure of inherited responsibility and legitimacy. In contrast, totalitarianism, like Maoist China, is a perfect example, represents is not represented as a theory, but as a total lived catastrophe. Mao Zedong did not seek order; he sought transformation. His regime was built on the belief that human beings, culture, and even nature itself could be reshaped through ideological will. In Maoist China, ideology replaced reality. During the Great Leap Forward, agricultural science was ignored. Farmers were punished for reporting accurate yields. Steel was smelted in backyard furnaces to safely or to satisfy quotas that existed only on paper. Tens of millions starved, not because of drought, not because of truth itself, or because truth itself became illegal. No one was able to say what was actually happening because it went against the regime. The Cultural Revolution deepened the horror. Children denounced parents, students beat teachers, history was erased, competence became suspicious, the loyalty replaced skill. This was not governance, it was psychological occupation. The state did not merely rule China, it colonized everyone's minds. When Mao died, something extraordinary happened. Maoism died with him, for the most part. The Communist Party did not fail, but it abandoned its own, or did not fall, but it abandoned its own ideology. God, I can't talk today. But it abandoned its own ideology almost entirely. Under Deng Xiaoping, markets returned, merit replaced revolutionary zeal, and reality was quietly allowed back in. No apologies were offered, no accountability was taken, and the trauma of what happened remained. The totalitarian systems like this survive not by being correct, but by being able to abandon truth without relinquishing power. That is their defining feature and their moral indictment. So that's about that for authoritarianism versus totalitarianism. At least
Yeah.
my definition of it.
That was all you wanted to that was all you wanted to say, really?
Well, I mean, I can keep going, but my notes go into monarchy as an authoritarian system that actually works.
Yeah, please elaborate on all that.
Well, we should have a bit more of a discussion instead of just pure monologue the whole time. Um, One thing you said Uh, did I remember this right? Competence became suspicious. That I really liked that. It's kind of at the core of why communism itself always fails, because when you have a system of any kind that is obsessed with lifting up those at the bottom and empowering those at the bottom, empowering the weaker or the less fortunate, the less anything, that is always what happens. That's always what happens next is those who are more capable than others are demonized, and they're basically the enemy. People who can actually do things, people who actually know stuff. The only people who are allowed to be good at anything are those in power that you can't really speak against anyway. Um, so I just really like that part. Those three words, competence became suspicious. Did I quote that right?
Yes.
Okay, I was.
I mean, that is the truth, though, too. It's like they didn't have like the regime didn't have total control over these people, so competence becomes, suspicious. Like, all right, what can this person do? They have this skill set that we're not in complete control of. So through that person, let's put someone in position that we own that doesn't actually have the skill at all, but they at least own them.
Yeah.
You know what I find funny about that is if a lot of these totalitarian regimes had any sense, or really just any wisdom, wouldn't they have implemented methods to try to be in the favor of these competent individuals to try to garner their favor, to get them on their side? To me, if I were a dictator of any kind, that's personally the approach I would take. Because not only does it bring further prosperity to my nation in the long term, but it also increases my favor with the people which I am ruling over without as much of an emphasis needed on fear tactics and total submission. Though I guess in that case it'd be more just authoritarian, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would
More
be.
or less, yeah. Because I mean, the totalitarian system is meant to completely crush every aspect of everyone's lives, not just the political sector.
Yeah, that is always the wise approach to reward competence. But the problem that all dictators face, all leaders in general, really, is if someone becomes too powerful in and of themselves, too rich, too influential, that becomes a threat. Sorry, that becomes a threat to their power. So they don't like that so much. Um, you in your explanation there, you said that authoritarianism and totalitarianism are completely different. And I got this little chart from Grok. I'll put it up on the screen. Um, I don't know if you guys can see it. I'll need to post it in the chat so you can see it better. But according to seemingly this chart, but also I looked on like Wikipedia, they both seem to agree that the two are different, but one is just a more extreme form of the other. Um, and that's actually the belief that I have. So, this specifically, Wise, do you want to elaborate on why you think they're completely different? Because I see authoritarianism, simply put. I'll just give my little spiel. Authoritarianism, simply put, is rigid government. It's the rejection of political plurality. They are not inherently autocratic, but can also be oligarchic, martial, or single party ruled. Totalitarianism is an authoritarian government that dictates both public and private life. Now, I think totalitarianism is just a more extreme form because authoritarianism is just simply rigid government that rejects plurality. So if you think they're completely different, do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, to contradict, well, I guess to contradict myself, they do share a lot of the same aspects, but I guess the fundamental difference between the two of them is like what you explained about parenthood being like a father, an authoritarian system, like just being a parent says, hey, this is what you're going to do. Here's why. Versus a totalitarian system says, hey, I need you to think these exact thoughts that I'm thinking, so you do it exactly the way I want you to do it. And that's obviously impossible. But both of them are, in essence, an authoritarian system. Just one of them takes it to the point of insanity, where you are trying to force an entire population to think and act and believe the same exact thing that you are doing, versus an authoritarian system says, hey, I need you to do this for this reason. And if you don't do it, you're going to be in trouble. So it's like parenthood versus a crazy person trying to make you have their mind, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose one's one's inherently religious, while the other one is just simply I'm in charge, or these are the rules. Period. Yeah, one's trying to change your thinking. Is that a good assessment of what you just said?
Yeah, for the most part. It's literally just, well, like the authoritarian systems are, let's say somehow Trump takes over the government fully, and all aspects of the government become Republican, conservative, right wing, whatever you want to call it. Uh, and the lefties and Democrats have no power. Effectively, it could become a one party system. Obviously, we have division of powers and everything, but it would effectively become a one party authoritarian system where the Republicans and the conservatives are pushing down whatever mandates they want, and no one can really fight them. And if people start protesting and fighting back, they could crack down on them, but they're not. They can't change how people think. They're not going to be able to change the very belief systems of all the people. Versus in like communist China, Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward China, it was, hey, you need to think this. You need to believe this. You
Hmm.
can't question any of it. Like trying to copy paste the mentality and ideology of the leader into every single person versus just like, hey, we're in charge. You know,
So totalitarianism, which is where the word comes from. Totality meaning, or it basically means in this context, everything about your very existence belongs to us. Your thoughts, who you are, everything is decided by us. Whereas authoritarianism, of course, all this according to you, I'm just trying to paraphrase. Um, Authoritarianism is just simply these are the parameters versus trying to control your very essence. Is that right? Is that your interpretation?
pretty much. Yeah. I mean, that's probably the easiest way to put it. Yeah.
Thoughts, Try?
Not a whole lot to add there, if I'll be honest.
Mm. So, why do you guys think that everyone, including and especially Americans, are so hostile to the idea of authoritarianism? The other day, what's his name? Joel Webben, I think. For some reason, I have a hard time remembering his last name. But anyway, Joel Webben started releasing a 10-part interview with Nick Fuentes. I have a lot of things to say about that.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
10 parts. Yeah, that's whatever. I won't get into that. But anyway, in the first part, it really caught my attention. He said, I don't think Americans could ever have a king. That's just not in our blood. And I could go on a rant about that as well, as to how retarded that is. But um, okay, so why is it, quote unquote, in our blood to reject people telling us what to do? When technically
It's not though. That's the
that's
thing.
that's always been the case with every civilization. There's always people in charge. We just choose who's in charge of us, or we think we do. We try to pretend we do, but ultimately someone is still in charge of us. So why are Americans so hostile to the idea of being told what to do?
Well, I mean, I think for what I would say on it is more likely than not, they don't like the whole reason we're doing this video here is uh no one understands the difference between authoritarianism and totalitarianism. They hear either word and it's automatically the worst thing in the world. Like, and they, relate those two different words with different regimes across history. But there are
Yeah,
actually some
but they're
benefits
allergic.
to both of the systems.
They're allergic to
Yeah,
both,
they're
though.
allergic to it.
Like they're allergic to
Yeah,
both
and then
is the point. They don't want either one. I think after we get through explaining this, and I think we already have, but it doesn't matter. People, even if they listen to us, they're still gonna think they're the same thing. Because they don't want to believe there's a
oh yeah,
difference. They
yeah.
don't want to believe one could be good. So why do you think that is?
Uh, Complacency. They're being lazy. They don't want to think beyond how things are, what they're told, and yet one of the things they no one ever actually thinks about is the fact that they already live in authoritarian systems. Everything about their lives is authoritarian. Like the very rules of the road they have to follow, the time to be at work, the job they have to do, the taxes they have to pay. Everything is already an authoritarian system. It's just they don't think of it that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh my God, Trump's going to be a dictator or whoever other world leader. Like you already live in a system where you have to answer to many other people and the rules that they put in place. But when that word comes up, people start freaking out. Like it's a lot of it's a lack of introspection and seeing the world for how it is. I think we discussed in one of the other videos, like the only way you could ever get out from under a system, any system, would be if you went to the literal middle of nowhere that's not owned by anyone and lived on your own, basically in a mud hut in the woods. Is the only way to do it. Or on some island in the middle of nowhere. Like there's no way to get out from under some sort of societal system. I mean, you could talk about like anarchists and how completely retarded that is because it's not functional in any sort of way. I get the mentality, but it's like they are the ultimate rejection of authority, and yet they can't exist without living in some sort of societal system. It's like it doesn't work. I think it's a lot of just ignorance, complacency, and this automatic reaction to, oh no, I don't want to be controlled. Like you're already controlled. The vote doesn't matter. Nothing you say or do matters. Everyone appointed over you is going to do whatever the hell they want, regardless. And you can't hold any of them accountable, specifically in like democracy and Marxist systems. But I think a lot of us just they don't think of it and they automatically have that reaction. So I guess the other question would be like, how do you get them to think?
Yeah, I like.
Kind of build upon what you're
Oh,
talking
go ahead.
about there. Uh, I'd argue a lot of that was induced through over a century's worth of propagandization. Holy crap! Say that 10 times fast. But particularly in the United States, we've been so propagandized to believe that our vote or our voice has any sort of impact in governance, and that we should we should want to have things this way, because if we believe that we have power, then there's no reason for us to fight back in any sort of way when that power that we, the people, don't actually wield is used against us. But if we have that conditioning of thinking that what we say and what our voice is, what our vote is, matters, they're able to keep us contained as the people. And that's just the United States. I'd even say in most other places in the world, this has been accelerated into outright totalitarianism, where you are being expected, with consequence of force to the extent of the laws that's being changed to accommodate this, to we have all these governments insisting on how their people think, what they say, how they should live. Need we go over the well, let's see, there was affirmative action that followed shortly after the Civil Rights Act was passed, which that's been accelerated into diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there's a whole bunch that we can get into regarding all of that. But this a lack of clarity in the distinction of authoritarianism, excuse me, versus totalitarian, because authority is necessary. And even if it weren't necessary, it's inevitable to some point. But if people in general can believe that authoritarianism is not something that they want, then that can be used to mask totalitarian reach in everything. And if I were to come up with a slogan for this, since those tend to be the things people eat up the most, is slogans. It's unfortunately how most political movements or ideologies get their traction. I would equate it to a similar formula that Archaeosophy actually made in one of his earlier videos about the difference between order, anarchy, and tyranny. You have libertarianism on one end of the scale, which is anarchy. You have totalitarianism on the other end, which is just tyranny. But to achieve that order in the middle, that's where you get authoritarianism. And really, anywhere on the spectrum that is not outright libertarianism or totalitarianism, it's all a form of authoritarianism, just to some degree. And that's all really the difference is, I'd argue.
And I try not to repeat this too often, but I really believe this. Like, you can relate everything in politics to parents and children. And I think I wasn't trying to be rhetorical or anything when I posed this question, but I think everything can be related to parents and children. And the reason people don't want to be told what to do is because that's a childlike response. That's a childlike, I don't want to say instinct, but we all have that in us to not want to be told what to do. It's that selfishness, that raw selfishness of I am me, so I am special, so don't tell me what to do because that goes against what I want to do. You know, I think it's that simple. The propaganda doesn't help, obviously, and it never will. I agree with Andrew Wilson. He says we need to have counter propaganda. We need to have propaganda for all of the good things, you know, having children, having families, and all that. But unfortunately, that's not quite enough. We're talking about power here. You can't propagandize power. Power propagandizes the people. So I don't really have a solution to fix our problems. I just don't want us to slide into totalitarianism, which is where we're headed. I think they tried that with COVID. That was the first true totalitarian experiment, at least in America. Let's just present the public with a crisis, and we'll just control every aspect of their lives from here on out. Because, well, the disease is never going to go away. So it looks like we're going to have to just dictate every aspect of your life forever. They really were going to try that. And anyone who says otherwise is an idiot.
What I'm curious about in that particular instance is why they didn't go all the way. Because as far as I'm aware,
I think they could feel.
Have.
I think they could feel the groundswell. People were about to say "fuck you." I remember.
I think a lot of us did.
Me personally, I remember me and a bunch of my coworkers gathered together in the middle of work, by the way, while we were on the clock and everything. Gathered together, and there are several women in this group too. And we decided together, okay, when Biden passes this law that says you can't work if you don't have the jab for, you know, businesses that have over 100 people, which is most places we all work at. Once this passes, we're going to show up to work anyway. We're not getting the jab ever, but we're going to keep showing up to work. We're not going to follow this in any way. And we were ready to put our freedom, so to speak, on the line. I think everyone in power could sense that from the people. They were about to have literally millions of people go against them on this. So the experiment failed. We're not ready for that kind of that kind of regime. Doesn't mean we. It doesn't mean we never will. Doesn't mean we'll never accept it. And it certainly doesn't mean we would always reject it now. We just didn't like the way they did it. I think if they were smart enough, and thankfully they're not, the people would accept totalitarianism right now. It just depends on who and depends on how.
Well, I'd say kind of in contrast to that, the whole COVID thing kind of sensitized people to what the governments have been doing and kind of bolstered up that rebellion or that rebellious attitude that specifically Americans have, even though there are plenty of them that are still wearing the mask to this day. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
the hell are you doing? You're in your car. Like, I've had 16 boosters. Like, for for a disease you could survive in your like. There's no like. This kind of goes back to what I was saying before. There seems to be like no introspection or ability to look at the situation from a holistic standpoint and go, huh, this is a bad thing about it. Here's a good thing about it. And they look at that particular situation from like the totalitarian dictatorial side. Like they literally tried to social engineer the entire world to be separated from each other,
Yeah.
to have all of this crazy hype about a disease or a virus that 99% of people could survive, and people fucking fell for it. We're just living there like, and the rest of us actually have our eyes open, at least more than the rest, are going like, do you not see what's happening, what they're trying to do, what they did, and all the things that I talked to my oldest daughter about this. Or well, she's 14 now. I talked to her about what happened with COVID. Like they used it as a way to push for more control. Just like they used every major crisis to push for more control.
Yeah, that's
It's
all
like,
it that's all it was
I mean,
about. People make the mistake of thinking that they were trying to do the best they can and it just kind of got out of control a bit. No, not at all. They knew what they were doing from the beginning, before this started actually. They knew, let's come up like even if COVID itself was not like created and released on purpose, and that's a whole debate in and of itself. But even if that wasn't the case, that they did not know the virus itself was coming, they knew how they were going to respond to it with their power from the beginning. Before they ever declared any kind of emergency, they knew what they were going to use this for. And the reason I personally, and I'm sure you guys are the same, did not get the jab, I did not take any measures of any kind, is because I thoroughly looked at the data as this was all starting, as this was appearing in the news. And from what I could tell, this was only affecting people with, for some reason or another, this sounds kind of harsh, but basically the weak. Those who are already immunocompromised, those who are really old, people who are already, I shouldn't say weak, feeble. Is that the right word? Feeble in some way. It was only affecting them. And I was like, well, I'm still young, so I'm fine. I don't
yeah,
have
they
anything
had
to worry about.
pre-existing conditions,
Yeah. And
I
which I
wasn't.
mean that
I did not understand the panic for that reason. I was like people I worked with who were much younger than me. I was like, why are you getting the jab? What the hell? Sorry, go ahead.
no, it
Oh,
just made me laugh because go ahead, Troy.
oh, I was just gonna say I wasn't even 20 years old when all that started kicking into place, so I was technically still in my teens. And I more or less had a similar thought that I am way too young for this to have any drastic effect against. And you know what? I finally did catch COVID in January of 2022, so a good few years later. And I was basically bedridden for 2 weeks straight. Never had any symptoms of anything of the sort since. So even when I did get it years later, I was able to walk it off.
Hmm.
I mean, I got it twice, I think, in the last 5 years, and I think only the first time was I down for like 2 days, and after that, it just felt like a bad cold. And like, this is what the world's panicking over. Like, if this is offing people the immunocompromised, all the people with pre-existing conditions, the old, like these people would have been offed by any other disease, not just this thing. It's just a bad cold. And like, and you look and you contrast that to the rest of the world, this totalitarian push down to control everybody in every aspect of life. I mean, you saw it in the news, like all of these different news reports of like pastors fending off police officers coming into their church saying you can't organize like this. Like COVID is like Arch was saying, one of the greatest examples of a totalitarian push that Americans at least have ever seen. And people fell for it. And you're looking at it now, like specifically when you look back on it, all the different weird aspects of it, like, no, that was a total effort to, well, not total, but a massive effort to socially engineer everyone to be in line with what they wanted. I mean, divide and conquer is still a very valid battle strategy.
I'm starting to like your definition of totalitarianism in that they're trying to change your very nature to their liking. COVID was, that also applies to COVID. How, they were saying like if you're unvaccinated, you're now like you're basically the flood. Like you're spreading this virus that's killing everybody. You are the virus. That's in essence what they were saying. You are the virus unless you get our jab. And Trump came up with the jab, by the way. Let's not forget that. Let's not pretend the Republican Party is all that much better than the Democrats.
I mean, it was he who appointed Fauci.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, if you want to use the easiest term to describe them, they're the unit party anyway.
Yeah.
You have the left, and then you have the apathetic right. They don't do anything, and they're all shaking hands under the table because it gives them more power. I mean, hey, welcome to democracy.
Yeah. The in regards to like we're all monarchists, and we want a central authority figure. We want someone to be able to tell people do this, do that. So why do we reject totalitarianism? People may think that's a contradiction, but actually one of the part of the very nature of monarchy is if one guy is ruling everything by design, there's no ideology behind it. There's no like, I'm going to lead you all into utopia. Hitler, Stalin, Mao, they were all ideologues. They were trying to bring their people into some kind of utopian future. That's not what kings do by definition. Kings are just simply the guy in charge. So why do we want kings, but we reject totalitarianism? Because one guy, unless he's a dictator, he's an ideologue, one guy, when he's ruling by himself, by design, can't wield that much power when you really think about it. Even if his word is law, he is above the law in every way. Whatever he wants, he gets. He still can't wield that much power, just in a practical sense. And this is one of the ridiculous things that Andrew Wilson tried to use against me when we were having our quote-unquote debate on this subject. One of the arguments he made was that medieval kings didn't have that much authority. So what are you talking about? And I was like, actually, they did. That's a myth. I don't know why people keep saying that. They absolutely, like, how did Henry VIII get away with so much shit if he was just some ceremonial figure? Okay, like, get out of here. They absolutely had that much authority at different times, of course. I'm not saying the entire time in every place. I'm not saying that. But for the most part, they did. But the reason you think they didn't is because it's actually quite difficult to manage that many people by yourself. You need help. And by help, I mean you need people to listen to you in the first place, even if you're supposed to be obeyed, no matter what. What if people say no? Kind of the very argument that dismantles republicanism entirely is the question of what if people disagree? I think all political debate really comes down to that question: which system is best? Well, what if people disagree? What if people don't obey? The only thing that addresses all those scenarios, or sorry, what addresses that happening in all those scenarios effectively is monarchy. What happens if
Yeah.
someone doesn't obey? The king has to call upon the people who will obey him. Usually that's most of the people. But what if it's not? Well, you got a war on your hands, but it's still a lot more stable than republics when republics start being divided. But anyway, the point is,
Yeah.
you have to make people happy with you. That's what I'm trying to get at here. Kings, no matter how much power they wield, absolute or not, they have to try to make at least the elite class happy with them, or most of them, enough of them. It's not just about, well, I'm the guy in charge, so you have to listen to me no matter what. What if people say no? And that's why kings are very, very rarely, only very rarely, totalitarian. They are,
Usually when there's a crisis.
yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, historically speaking, not to derail you, but most of the time a
No, I
king
was done.
cracked down on his people, raised taxes, and all that stuff was because there was a conflict. Either some sort of civil war going on or a conflict with a rival nation. Most
Mm-hmm.
of the time, and this is one of the things I've said in my videos and we've talked about here, most of a monarchical reign was quiet. It
Yeah,
was there and it did what it needed to do. And if you want to go into like the slogans like Troy was talking about, you can kind of define monarchy down to a couple different things. Like the essence of it is it mirrors the family unit, like we already talked about, mom, dad, kids, the monarch, the queen, and the subjects. And one of the bigger things why a monarchical system being authoritarianism or being authoritarian works is because there's authority paired with responsibility. The
mm-hmm.
power is tied to consequence. The
Mm-hmm.
leadership is shaped by inheritance and legacy, and that individual was raised from birth to lead and understand the intricacies of leadership and governance versus like Franco, who came into power basically had a military junta where it was military power pushed it down and it was completely reliant on him. A monarchical system has legitimacy, it has legacy, it has a functionality that allows for the best person to be in charge, to take accountability, and to be ultimately responsible for everything that happens within their society. Like what I think to talk about is it's the positive feedback loop. The monarch makes the right decision and the people flourish. The monarch makes the wrong decision and the people suffer. And they all know who to blame no matter what. Versus in a normal, quote unquote, standard authoritarian system, they know who to blame, but it's all going to collapse because there's no longevity to it. And in a totalitarian system, everybody automatically knows who to blame because it's a totalitarian system. But in a monarchical system, it is a mirror of the family unit. Like in your own families, you're not just going to say, "Hey, kids, you get to do whatever the hell you want, burn the house down, eat all the candy, do all this stuff, let in all the neighbors." Like, no, it's like you have certain rules in place, and you sometimes, like you were talking about, Art, have to crack down and say, "Hey, no, we're doing it this way, and if you don't do this, you're going to be punished for it because you know better than the kid. You've been raised, you're the adult, you have all the perspective and the knowledge to say, hey, you probably shouldn't eat a whole bucket of candy and stay up till midnight watching whatever on TV when you have a school night." And
Yeah,
like, just to give an example, like you have to have that authority in place that benefits the kid, which then benefits, the entire family. Like if you had a kid that's acting out and burning the house down, eating all the candy and not doing what they're supposed to do, it's going to cause a bunch of problems down the line. They're going to have issues in school. They're fighting people. They're not going to be respecting you. I mean, one of the greatest examples of how this system works, like you said, the family, the perfect example is if, and you've seen it through different examples. I'll see if I can pull one up. When a kid's acting out and an actual strong leader figure steps into the scene or wherever they're at, the kid automatically starts acting better.
Yeah.
because they have a leader to rely on, and people are just collectively a bigger version of a kid that's doing whatever the hell they want. They automatically orientate towards a leader that actually is good. But if you have an authoritarian leader that's just an asshole, that just, hey, you're going to do this or you're going to get smacked in the mouth, is abusive. I would say that like an abusive leader would be like an authoritarian leader, and a totalitarian leader would be like actively trying to change the very personality and the thoughts of the child, versus a monarch's like, hey, I'm dad. You're going to do it this way because of this. And this is why it's good for you. If you don't, you will be punished, but I still love you, versus the other two systems.
Yeah,
If that kind of makes sense.
the word responsibility is the key difference, I think. That's the way you can simplify, I think, this entire conversation. Responsibility. In a totalitarian, with a totalitarian regime, you as a person don't matter. And responsibility at the highest echelons it doesn't matter. You as a person don't matter. Their bad decisions don't matter because they control everything. So what? They fucked up, but so what? You have to deal with it. They take no responsibility. None. It's the same thing with republics. They never have to take responsibility either because they're run by politicians. The biggest threat to a politician is getting voted out of office. We want a responsible government, and there is only one responsible kind of government: monarchy. There's only that. Change my mind.
I don't.
I mean,
Go ahead, Trey.
I'd also like.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd also like to remind everyone of something I've mentioned here on the council many, many times. But I think I've finally found a way to distinct it as opposed to the past few times I've brought this up. Under a monarchy, people have less of an incentive to tolerate tyrannical conditions. When we really think about it, one of the biggest reasons that we live in the world and the way it is today is because the overwhelming majority of the average person tolerates the conditions we're all in. Now, of course, we could get into things like elite theory, which propose that the people can't really organize and lead themselves, which is true, but we also have to remember the existence of counter-elites, which is the concept of people with the capacity to lead and to amass followers, gaining power for themselves. And there's more of an incentive for counter-elites to rise up against corrupt elites under a monarchy, because the authority is so direct and apparent. Everyone knows who to praise when things are good, everyone knows who to blame when things are bad. But as I mentioned just today before, if we all believe that our voices and our votes can change things, well, you'd think things would get better, right, if that was true. Clearly, they don't.
Everything, I mean, I don't want to say everything, but damn near everything is top down. I think it's safe to say we are all elite theorists here. I think our group is all elite theorists. I think that's safe to say. But everything, just about everything, is top down, and that includes responsibility itself. Think about it. Like, if you have irresponsible leaders, you're going to have an irresponsible people, which is exactly what we have now. If they're not responsible,
Vice versa as well.
Why the hell should we be? We can be as responsible as we want. One, we still need to be ruled. That's just a fact of life when it comes to commoners. We still need to be ruled. But also, it doesn't make a difference to those in power, no matter how responsible, no matter how responsible we are as commoners. It doesn't affect the elites, really. If they're irresponsible, we're going to be. We follow their lead, whether we like it or not. That's just the reality of hierarchy.
Yeah.
Irresponsible parents make irresponsible children.
Funny enough.
Maybe you have one child who's like, oh no, my parents were really irresponsible and I chose to be responsible. Okay, great, but what about your 5 other siblings? How did they turn out? Not so well. And yes, that is kind of a reflection of my own siblings' experience, but I won't get into that. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, what you were just saying there, that's actually a good way to summarize something else I've brought up many times, and that was King Mosiah's warnings to his people when he dissolved his monarchy. One of the figures that he references, going back to the Book of Mormon here, was King Noah, who was the successor to a righteous king who surrounded himself with unrighteous elites, and the people followed and became wicked as well.
Every time. Every time the people follow the lead of those who lead them. Just that simple.
Yeah, so I just realized as you were saying that, yeah, that's more or less what he was warning about.
Yep.
Well, a lot of it's just common sense and cause and effect, right? It's just like we were talking about this whole time. People need to be led, and you need to have leaders appointed over them that actually know what the hell they're doing. But if the leader's a piece of crap, the leader's going to do all these things. I'm looking at democracy here. Going to put all these things into power, into place that are not good for the people, then things are going to get worse. And that goes back to like the vote. You know, does the vote actually matter? I would say
Of
no.
course not.
Like, and I've asked people this as well. Yeah, if everyone in America, let's say next election cycle, didn't vote at all, and I asked people this, do you think the system would stop? Like, no, it would make some sort of excuse, like, oh, we need to put this person in power or put this policy in place to keep the system running.
Or
I'm like,
even better question: do you think any politicians would step down if no one got any votes?
hell no.
I think that question should wake people up to the reality of voting at all in a republic or otherwise. Like that question alone. If nobody voted, do you think politicians would step down? Well, hey, no one voted for
Well, I think
me.
it
I
was.
guess I have to step down.
I think it was either Plato or Aristotle that really highlighted the fact that in like a democratic or a Marxist system, the corrupt are always the ones who gain power because they're the ones who have the most drive to get it. It's an automatic thing because of how the system functions. You only get into positions of power if you're willing to cater to the masses. And the masses, in this case, are a bunch of idiots who just do whatever they feel like. And that usually is the wrong thing. Just like a child trying to eat as much candy as possible, stay up late, and not go to school. They're going to do whatever they want. And there's no top down control that says, hey, no, 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 you can't do that. And the politicians acting upon the whims of the child, or people in this case, you're going to get all the craziness we see. You
And,
have all the rainbow nonsense. We have feminism. We have all this other self-destructive bullshit that's
Sure,
destroying everything.
and when you really
I'm sure
think
you
about
guys are
it,
familiar.
let me say this
Oh,
real quick. This is actually very
sure.
important. When you really think about it, so why do people believe in democracy? It's not entirely because they think it gives them a voice or some shit like that. What they're really admitting is that they think, even if their vote mattered, they think that the person they're voting for has good intentions. It's really a system built on, I believe politicians have good intentions. Whether your vote matters or not, that's really why you're voting. You think
Hmm.
there's no way, if I'm voting for this person, it must mean they don't have some secret agenda, some hidden motive. No, they're only doing this. They're on the campaign trail. They're going through all this effort to make my life better because they just care so much.
Hmm.
If you vote, that is exactly what you believe. And that's why the people
Yeah,
are
I
stupid.
can touch on that one.
Democracy is the ultimate proof that the people cannot rule themselves.
Hmm.
They
It,
don't
it
care
is
about you. And if
active
you vote,
failure.
it's because you think they do. You're an idiot. All right, sorry, go ahead.
Well,
Yeah,
when they bring, go ahead.
if I may, let's take someone who just to play devil's advocate here. Anyone know who Brandon Herrera is?
That sounds familiar, but I don't
Yeah,
think
he's
so.
a YouTuber. does a lot of stuff with guns and stuff.
Yeah, he's a gun tuber who lives in Texas, so he's actually trying to run for the head of his district for a second time in the past few years. And assuming his intentions are as pure as he says, the power structures that exist as is have every incentive to make sure he never gets into power of any kind, because he generally wants what's best for the people in his district, assuming he is truthful in that. So the
I think
incentive
Casey
of the
Touche
power. Yeah,
doing
I
the
brought
same
up
thing
Case.
for Ohio.
Yeah, no, I brought that up a little while ago as well. And it's interesting to consider. I, I think it was we had Okairo on when I asked if anyone thought he had a chance, and truthfully, I still don't know. But suppose either of these guys manage to get into office of any kind. First of all, the only reason I think they would even be let in is to placate the masses who are backing these guys. Secondly, it would absolutely be a measure to keep. Sorry, let me rephrase that. They will absolutely do everything they can to keep these guys just as much in line as they've done with every other politician. To not do so, it would be entirely detrimental to your totalitarian uh, objectives. I speak directly, of course, to what we'd commonly call the deep state, excuse me, secret combinations, and so forth.
Well, I mean, you could look at Trump for that. His first term, he was all fiery. This one, he's just like every other politician. You know, I mean, not to bring in the
Oh no,
noticeable ones,
I
but
think it's worse than that. Like, didn't Israel just
oh yeah,
give him the like ultimate Jew supporter award or something like that?
I
He's
think
They
so.
named him the first Jewish president, to be exact.
yeah,
God.
he's
Well,
worse than Bush or anyone before him. He's the worst of them all.
like to
I'm
touch
not saying
on,
like Woodrow Wilson, not that far back, but he is certainly
yeah,
not just another politician. He's worse.
yeah. Well, to touch on what you were talking about, like the politicians and people thinking that the only reason they vote is they think the politician actually gives a crap, and not to bring the noticeable ones into this, but like I look at people when they say that, like who you're voting for this person? Why? Oh, they have my best interest in mind. Like really? Let's go look at their history. 93 out of 100 senators have accepted ADL money or APAC money. Like, you don't think they have some sort of agenda? Like, really? Just to bring them into this is a perfect example of politicians being two-faced liars because that's their job and having an agenda. Like, I look at them like 93 out of 100 senators, each state has two, have taken APAC money. Like,
Let me put it
you
this
don't
way.
think that they're having, go ahead.
Um, what'd you say the percentage was? 90,
It's like 93 out of
right.
100 of them have taken APAC money.
So 93%.
It's like
Okay.
the current
Let's
standing ones.
if
And that's just from one super PAC.
so you let's say okay, let's I'll grant maybe some politicians every once in a while actually care. They are not campaigning, they're not raising money, they're not trying to get into office for selfish gain. Every once in a while that happens, maybe. I'll possibly grant that. Okay. But it's still the majority of them who are not like that. That's a fact. So even if you get this one guy who genuinely cares, who is as altruistic as one can possibly be, it could be Jesus Christ himself. Who does he have to work with? Hundreds of people who are not like that. So does it even matter if you get a genuine politician once in a while? Of course it doesn't.
Nope.
He is vastly outnumbered by selfish interests. And I want to use this analogy. So 93% of people are confirmed corrupt. And yeah, like you said, Try, that's just from just one of these big money sources. Just one of them. 93% have accepted money from this one organization. If I pointed a weapon at you, let's say, I don't know how YouTube is going to tolerate what I'm about to say. So I'll just say a weapon. I'm pointing a weapon at you, and I said there's a 93% chance it will fire and hurt you. Would you still stand there and be like, yeah, but there's a 7% chance it won't?
Hell no.
People don't even
No,
play
those
with
are
those kinds of odds, even if it's reversed. Like, there's only a 7% chance that it'll fire and hurt you. They still wouldn't play with those odds. So, why do we play with these odds when it's 93% minimum against us? I can't
I think a lot
articulate
of it's just
how retarded
complacency.
democracy is. Can't put it
Yeah,
into
it's
words.
it's like the whole frog in a boiling pot analogy. Like the heat's been turned up so gradually for the last 200 something years that I mean, look what well, if you want to look back at the Revolutionary War, what did they protest? Other than what we know, like the founding fathers were full of shit. Their whole thing was, well, not to get into that, but like, what was the taxation rate? Like 3%, whatever the hell it was. It was very small. Now look what we got. People are tolerating this. Like the heat's been
suppose
turned up so much.
yeah, supposedly it was over 4 tax codes, like the acts. Admittedly, that's the extent of my knowledge. But we have, let's see, 4 tax acts versus um. Oh, I'm just thinking about what we're taxed on, but I realize it take less time to find things we aren't taxed on.
Yeah. I mean, it's in my oldest
I think some
video.
states have like,
You can't have democracy without having a bloated system like this that, needs to be constantly fed. It's just not
well,
possible to have this much bureaucracy and you can do it for cheap. It's not possible.
so I call it faceless bureaucracy. If you want to dismantle it, where do you even begin? Like, there's so many little threads sticking out that go nowhere. How the hell do you even begin to even try to figure out what it is, let alone how to fix it?
Yeah.
Something I was going to mention very briefly a few minutes ago that I've come to realize about elections. We've all heard the saying that if our votes mattered, they wouldn't let us do it, right?
Yeah.
When you really think about it, all elections do is assure them of our consent to the elite screwing us over. That's basically what you're saying when you turn a ballot. I hereby give you permission to ruin my life.
Or
That's really
or
what it boils down to.
at minimum it's admission of compliance. It means even if I know what you're doing, I'm not going to do anything about it.
Like, hey, you voted for it. You signed on the dotted line. It's
There
your fault.
there is a
I'm not
way
accountable for this. You are.
there is a way to vote without it being utterly retarded and corrupt and pointless. There is a way to vote, and that's simply follow someone you actually believe in. You don't need a piece of paper. Hierarchy. You follow, I mean, not all of us, obviously, but you follow your father because you respect him. That's in a way, that's a vote, is it not? And the concept of voting, even if it worked, even if everything we believe about it was true, it still doesn't make any sense because there's going to be people who vote for someone else than who you voted for. So why not just like skip the bullshit and just follow the person you believe in?
Actually, you know what I just realized is a good example of voting in action? Polls. Think about it. Someone puts out a poll about any subject for any reason. All it objectively accomplishes is the people who put a vote on those poll, what they choose for, let's say, what's your favorite food? And you put tacos, pizza, chicken, and hamburgers. All that tells you is of the people who have come across your poll and decided to press an option, it just tells you how many people pressed what option.
Yeah, like
That's it.
it's it's good for information, I suppose, especially when it's anonymous. No one knows who voted what. It's good for information. Like, I hold polls on my Twitter. Like, hey, what video do you guys want next, or something like that. You guys have seen it. I let people vote on, things like that, but it has nothing to do with like how should I wield my power? That would be retarded. Democracy is retarded. But yeah, for just finding out what people are thinking, what people prefer, and taking that into account, sure. I don't think kings should do it, because then it'll just get into people's heads like, wait, why doesn't this actually decide anything? So kings shouldn't do it. But if you're a person, or like if you're a content creator, or if you're a corporation, yeah, it's good for finding out what people are thinking.
Or worse
Well, I mean, I
yet,
could
if a
say that.
king holds polls, if I may, real quick, if a king were to do so, it were to call into question his validity as a ruler. Like, why are you making the decisions if you're constantly asking us for our input when you are supposed to be leading us, your followers, your citizens?
Yeah.
Like I said, you could probably do it in a way that's just the king's just asking for information. It's like, hey, what problems are they facing right now versus what can I fix because of what you want? So you could do it a different way. It's like, hey, what issues are you seeing from the ground up? And then, the king would be able to make the decision from there. But obviously, that's still kind of in line with what you're talking about. But in this case, maybe just it's information gathering versus having the people decide.
So yeah, kings
Yeah.
shouldn't do it. But back to
It's literally just to gather information, yeah.
yeah, back to the original topic that we kind of strayed there. I think where we were originally going with talking about democracy is it leads to totalitarianism in some way or another. Maybe not. Actually, no, I will not say that, because I realized before I said it that it was incorrect. It will lead to totalitarianism, even in the we will try to control everything about your essence sense. Because that's the only way to make democracy work across the long term. If you want it to last 1,000 years, which has never happened, if it were to happen, that's the only way you can do it, is by basically just, continue to have votes and shit, but the state's going to try to control your every thought.
Pretty much.
That's the only
I mean,
way.
part of
Like,
that is goes
by
into.
I'm almost done. By design, democracy is divisive. By design.
Yeah.
If everyone agreed, you wouldn't vote. I'm not saying that's even possible for everyone to agree, but think about this. Could you even have a democracy if everyone agreed on everything? No. But since people don't agree, why is compromise any good? Because all you're doing is incentivizing people to continue to disagree. Like, okay, you lost the election. The person you voted for did not win. Now you just have to suck it up and accept it.
Yeah.
That doesn't make people happier.
I mean, tyranny of the majority is another part of it. Yeah.
It's hardly compromise, because it's really just half the population just lost. Half the population said they wanted something, and they're going to specifically not get it. I think Aiden has made entire videos on this. Like, it's cognitive dissonance on a grand scale. You really think something is either happening that really isn't, or you think it's going to happen and it doesn't. But you keep believing in the system. So that obviously is just going to wear at your psyche over time. And look where we are now. The only way to keep cohesion at this point, dictatorship. And we don't want that. We're monarchists, and we don't want that. We want a proper ruler, not a dictator.
Well, I think a lot of people are confused over how democracy could turn into a totalitarian system. Like, well, you have to look at how it functions. To say the majority votes on abortion. Abortion is now a thing. Now you can go unalive your unborn. The other 49 or 50%, 49% of people said it was bad. But now, if you, who have a moral issue with unaliving young ones, goes and tries to stop someone who's trying to unalive their young one, now you're in violation of a law. It's like, well, now they can crack down on you to stop you from saving a life. It's like, that's, from a easy to understand perspective, and then it just gets worse over time as more and more policies like this are put in place, to the point where the only way to enforce these contradictive things is with a totalitarian rule, and then obviously everything collapses.
Yeah, I mean, you are correct, but it's also even more simple than that. North Korea has elections. So obviously my point is we can continue to have elections and democracy until the end of time, but is it always going to be honored in any way? Of course not. You can have a dictator
Oh no,
for life who still holds elections.
it's theater.
Just
It's all theater.
it doesn't work. Democracy never works, and people always try to justify it with, well, that's not real democracy. Sorry, it's always real democracy. That's what you can't learn. It's always real democracy. Democracy never means anything. Never.
Blind leading the blind.
And the longer you try to keep it up, the closer you get to totalitarianism. That is the point. You want to keep things stable. You want to keep your people free for the most part, however you define that. You want to keep all these things? Get rid of democracy. Don't make a
No, but
dictator
my vote.
don't make a dictator necessary, which is all you're doing by trying to keep playing pretend with this system or that system.
Well, it's like when the kids are all acting out, dad, or in this case, a dictator comes in. All right, you're all done. You're all grounded. You're all in trouble now.
An
Now
authority comes in,
you have to crack down.
not a dictator. An
Yeah, in
authority
this
comes
case,
in.
yeah. It's like, oh, and then all the kids are miserable and upset because everything was taken away from them because they're acting out. Like, well, that is just a natural reaction to people burning a whole damn house down. Not to derail from what we're talking about, but have either of you heard about like moral realist authoritarianism? I didn't discover this on my own, but it was something that I kind of did, but then realized this concept had already existed. But it's just, it looks great on paper, but it's untenable in practice.
No, I don't think I've heard of it, but
Me neither.
I did want to relate this again back to parents and children, and I think because you and I are parents wise, we keep doing that, but we're doing it very much on purpose because everything
I mean, it makes sense.
regarding authority and power is directly related to how parents take care of their kids. But sorry, I think of any other system, no matter what you pretend it is, it's always going to be the same structure. One guy in charge, his crew, and the people. Captain, crew, passengers. Every system is like that, no matter how hard you try to not make it like that. But would you, what, I can't imagine this. Imagine or try to imagine a parent, a father, implementing some kind of democracy in his household. Like he has 4 kids. It's maybe even him and his wife, but they're outnumbered by their kids and they try to make it a democracy. Like, okay, you guys can decide what we're going to have for dinner. Just what do you think is going to happen? Is it always going to be something healthy? What do you think that would result as? Same principle. The entire
It's
point,
chaos.
the entire point of ruling is to guide people, and if by necessary, by force. That's the whole point. If the people could rule themselves, you wouldn't need to be there as an authority figure in the first place.
Hmm.
Sorry. All right, I'm done.
Well, like last night, well, this is literally last night. The three older kids, 14-year-old, the 10, and the 9-year-old, were all they had a discussion. Oh, I sat them all down, like, hey, you're all gonna shut up and listen real quick. You all need to talk to each other more because they had all this like fighting back and forth, and like, we come home, mom and I come home, we go do things, and you three are always fighting over nothing. And I'm like, all right, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna sit the hell down. You're gonna talk to each other about how your days went. Right? I'm sitting there just not dictating, but watching them and adding to the discussion. But they ended up having a good time talking to each other, reconnecting in a way that they haven't in a while. I'm like, oh, look at that. Look how that works. But that wouldn't have happened without me, dad, the king of the house, going, this is what you're going to do right now. And it ended up making things better. But if I hadn't done that and just let them continue doing what they're doing, they still would be fighting, still be up each other's butts and just like driving us up the wall. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, that's just an anecdote,
the
but it's
it's
a
the
good
whole
example of
stop the music tactic. Just okay, everyone stop. Whatever you're doing, stop. Get over here. You know,
it. Yeah, but it
and
worked though. And it's
which
that
only
example of top-down leadership.
which only an authority figure can do. They're not going to do it on their own. They're going to if you leave it up to them, they're going to just keep running around screaming, throwing punches, whatever, until they get the upper hand on each other. It all does
Well,
relate
it
down to
devolves into
parents and
violence,
kids,
and
doesn't it? It just
it
in you can
does.
in it I can't find my words apparently. There's nothing about politics that you can't relate to parents and children. Now people will say, well, like,
Pretty much. I mean,
but adults are adults. So
en
every
masse, no, they're not.
every homeless person I've ever seen is above the age of 40. Like, what are you talking about? What does age have anything to do with it? This, like, just because you're a certain age doesn't mean you're wise, doesn't mean you have experience, doesn't mean you know what you're doing, doesn't mean any of that.
Hmm.
And also, why not just apply that to your job? Like, hey, I'm 45, so don't tell me how to do my job. Like, if it doesn't make sense at work, why would it make sense with politics? Like, what the hell?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what we were saying that people are kind of en masse act like spoiled children. Like they just do whatever they feel like, and it doesn't actually work out for them most of the time.
Yeah. Sorry, Tri. Are we cutting you off? If you want to say
Oh,
something, we'll let you.
no, not at all. I'm just taking in everything you guys are saying, since I don't have the practical experience of being a father, so that's not insight I would have.
But you were a child, though, so you have that perspective.
Yeah, I suppose I do. It doesn't mean I have a full understanding of, actually, you know what? I realize I'm cutting myself off here, but I'm realizing that my inability to recognize why that authority in my life was necessary as a young child, it's perfectly reflected in how republicanism more or less works. I mean, we've covered this also with Okara on the podcast. Democracy in its purest form technically isn't possible. So really, it's republicanism, uh, which is the most. I don't even want to say possible. It's a democracy that works temporarily. It works on the assumption that everyone plays their part, it does the role the way they're supposed to. But just like how, um, gosh, how do I put this? I'm actually going to revisit a very old argument I've used that I had started using upon becoming a monarchist. You wouldn't expect someone who's trained as an electrician to be a plumber or vice versa. No one in their right mind would unless that person knew both trades. Why are we doing the same with leadership? And that's something that people don't understand about authority. Uh, like how children don't necessarily understand why they have to do what their parents tell them. Because being a parent comes with a different experience necessary that would help them develop specific skill sets that the children don't have yet.
Yeah, to an extent you're correct, but authority really is just about order. It's not about, because like if we left everything to the experts, communists have presented this argument before as well. It's still nonsense. Leave everything to the experts. Well, like, okay, technically there's no way to define that or to measure it. Who's the most expertist among us? Like, there's no real way to measure that.
I understand
Authority
what you mean.
authority is just about order. It's about get along, keep the economy running, keep the peace, and I'll step in when you guys get out of hand. Like being a parent.
Perhaps I should elaborate then. It's the difference between those who have a knack for leadership and the ability to guide and direct versus those who don't. In a similar way, not everyone is suited for every trade. Does that maybe
Yeah.
describe what I'm trying to convey a bit better?
Yeah.
And then I think, Wise, if you have more examples you want to share, unless Arky, there was something else you wanted to add.
I think I've pretty much gotten it out of my system. And I kind of gave away my whole strategy with this discussion at the beginning by saying, you can relate everything back to parents and children. You really can. I guess my final word on this is very simply, like, what do you think? Who do you think is a better parent? One who does nothing. You can tells their kids you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. The parent who lets them live their own lives, have their own personalities, but keeps the order, keeps the peace when necessary. Or a parent who tries to dictate their every move and every thought. So that's really the difference between these levels of authority. Let them be, but keep order. That is authoritarianism. Just raw authoritarianism, that's what it is. And when you relate it back to children and taking care and raising children, that's what it looks like. And that's exactly why these things don't work. It's the same thing. Telling your kids, I'm going to tell you exactly what to think. Well, it's like they have their own thoughts, and you can't change that. They are their own person, and you can't change that. The only sensible way to rule, to govern, is to keep order. Everyone is their own person. Communists, sorry, we will never be machines. Well, I shouldn't say never. I guess you don't really know, do you? But we shouldn't be machines. I'll say that. We shouldn't be machines. And you certainly aren't going to make us machines by, keeping your thumb over us. But also, it's not good to just leave people completely alone. People need to be ruled. People need to be guided. And the simplest, easiest way to demonstrate and explain this is parents and children. Which kind of parent is the best? Pick one of the three. I think we all agree it's the middle one. So those are my final thoughts.
No, yeah,
Is there
you're right.
anything you,
Well, I'd say hopefully, for those listening, we've explained the difference between authoritarianism, totalitarianism, and touched on monarchy to a point. But yeah, hopefully it kind of takes away some of the confusion and some of the stigma around these systems. Obviously, totalitarianism is not good in most cases because what it tries to do, but authoritarianism is normal and natural. It just depends on the type of system you're looking at. If you're looking at monarchy, or in this case, parenthood, proper parenthood, it's obviously going to be the most functional thing we've ever had, like I like to say. But if you're looking at authoritarian systems like Francoist Spain, then obviously it doesn't work because it's not structured properly. And so hopefully that explains some things. Like Mark was saying about all the communists and the lefties, the utopian view that every single person is cookie cutter, all blank slates, doesn't work. That completely ignores human nature, hubris, and different personalities. Like when you look at my own kids, each one of them is different. They all have their own ideas, their own ways of doing things. And the only way they get along is when mom and dad step in and say, hey, no, this is what you're going to do. Here's why. Make it work. Versus just, this is exactly what you will think and what you will say, what you believe, or let them do whatever the hell they want. And that's why democracy doesn't work. That's why Marxist systems don't work. That's why the current systems we're dealing with don't work. It's letting them do whatever the hell they want. And you
like,
need top-down control. You need the authority to say, hey, this is the way, make it happen.
and to kind of add to your point there, although I don't have the experience of a father, I do have that of being a child, specifically one diagnosed with autism, and I can personally attest to this. Some children, some people also need more care than others.
Yep. There's that too.
Yeah. You can't cookie cutter everything. It doesn't work.
So, good discussion, guys. That actually went much longer than I thought. I was expecting this to only be like 30, 40 minutes tops, but we're at just about an hour and a half. So
Really, I was expecting
nice.
this to be. I think this is shorter than what I was expecting personally.
Well, of course, we could still like just go on and on and on.
Yeah.
For how like concentrated I wanted this to be, I think we reached a healthy length here. So, yeah, good talk,
Well,
guys.
there's quite a few things different with this one, especially since for the first time since we started the podcast last year, Scurry Rum was unable to join us.
Is this really the first
Definitely,
time he's been absent?
Where
yeah,
is
Ever?
that
no,
orange?
he's been present every time since the beginning up till now.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. I'd somehow never noticed that.
Well, all the quits are missing and all the goofy humor. So there's that.
Yeah.
That's how I noticed, kind of.
So yeah, good talk, guys. And oh yeah, announcement. So from now on, everybody, this podcast will be not live. It'll no longer be live, and that's to make several things a lot easier for us to make. Long story short, but it will still be on Sundays. The videos will still premiere. Um, yeah, that's all I got. So unless you guys have anything to add, I think we can call it good.
I've got nothing.
Uh,
So to the audience at home, till next time.
yeah. Thanks for watching.